Welcome to the Jagged Moon Podcast. My name is Dr. Paul Hamilton, and I'm here with Professor Hunter Reeve. And we're going to discuss two poems, one by Emily Dickinson and one by Professor Hunter Reeve. One is called I Cannot Live With You. That's poem 640 by Emily Dickinson, and the other one is The Flowers by Hunter Reeve. Both of these are poems about heretical, blasphemous, transcendent love. And so I think that they will be a lot of it will be a lot of fun to discuss, and there will be hopefully interesting for everyone. So we're going to begin with Hunter Reeve reading the poem I Cannot Live With You by Emily Dickinson.
I cannot live with you. It would be life, and life is over there behind the shelf. The sexton keeps the key to putting up our life, his porcelain like a cup, discarded of the housewife, quaint or broke. A newer Cerberus pleases, old ones crack. I could not die with you, for one must wait to shut the other's gaze down. You could not, and could I stand by and see you freeze without any my right of frost, death's privilege? Nor could I rise with you because your face would put out Jesus's that new grace. Glow plain and foreign on my homesick eye, except that you than he shone closer by. They judge us how for you served heaven, or sought to. I could not. Because you saturated sight, and I had no more eyes for sordid excellence as paradise. And were you lost, I would be, though my name rang loudest on the heavenly fame. And were you saved, and I condemned to be, where you were not, that self were hell to me. So we must meet apart, you there, I here, with just the door ajar, that oceans are, and prayer, and that white sustenance despair.
Well, that was a wonderful reading. Thank you very much for that. So I think that a great way to approach this poem will be to divide it into a couple parts. So what I'll do is I'll read just a short part, which would be the first three stanzas, and then we'll discuss those, and then I'll read another part, kind of the middle part, and then we'll read the final part together. There's a lot to take on with this poem here, and I'd love to dive in. So, I cannot live with you. It would be life, and life is over there behind the shelf the sexton keeps the key to, putting up our life, his porcelain like a cup, discarded of the housewife, quaint or broke. A new Severus pleases, old ones crack. So the poem opens with this image that life is over there behind the shelf the sexton keeps a key to. The sexton is sort of like a church who has all the keys and takes care of the church grounds. And the image is of the sexton taking her life with her lover and putting it up on a shelf that is out of reach, like porcelain, like a porcelain cup. And that porcelain cup is also compared to something that could be discarded by a housewife. Old ones crack. A new Severus pleases. Severus is a kind of porcelain china. It's something that They made teapots and teacups out of fine porcelain. But the imagery is of something very fine put away out of reach. Why has it been put away? That might be the question. But what are your thoughts about that, Hunter?
My thoughts are that, uh, first of all, she's unable to live with her beloved, and it's a very uh, delicate situation. And the sexton keeps the key to putting up our life, his porcelain like a cup. Discarded of the housewife, quaint or broke, a newer Sevres pleases, old ones crack. There you see the imagery of the cup, of the porcelain, uh, cracking and needing to be renewed. And I think that's set, and the sexton, who is a church janitor, if you will, sets up the poem for the religious situation that we find.
Yeah, absolutely. So the cup, their love is compared to a porcelain cup that gets put away by a church sexton, and so somehow their love is like something precious that's put away, sort of where you keep your precious things in the church, and locked somehow it's locked away inside the church with all of these precious porcelains there. And and yet she modifies that image, which is what complicates it in that third stanza, because it's not just something precious that's put away. It's something that is like a precious cup that might have been discarded by a housewife, quaint or broken. She talks about old ones crack, old cups crack, an old love that somehow has become broken, discarded, thrown away, casually discarded, to be replaced by something new. And why is it that this precious thing has that is sort of locked away in the church out of reach, is also something that is compared to a cup that's been broke or discarded, and old love. I mean, I think that image of love is like a cracked dish or a cracked cup, that is something precious, certainly very, very resonant here.
Yes, definitely.
So,
So,
yeah, sorry, did you have a point that you want to make?
no, I think that was very well put. And I think, again, that the porcelain shows how delicate their love is, and that, again, it's been put away.
Right, locked in the church. And I think
Yeah,
that image of the love that's locked away out of reach inside the church, and it's the church groundskeeper or janitor who's locked it away, is important, to set up the imagery of the poem.
yes.
So I will read the next section here, and then we can discuss how the poem develops. I could not die with you, for one must wait to shut the other's gaze down. You could not. And could I stand by and see you freeze without my right of frost, death's privilege? Nor could I rise with you, because your face would put out Jesus's, that new grace grown glow plain and foreign on my homesick eye, except that you than he shone closer by. They judge us how, for you served heaven, or sought to. I could not, because you saturated sight, and I had no more eyes for sordid excellence as paradise. So I think these first two stanzas are challenging in this section. I could not die with you, for one must wait to shut the other's gaze down. You could not. And could I stand by and see you freeze without my right of frost, death's privilege. The idea that she could not die with him because he would not be able to wait to shut her gaze down. This raises a lot of questions. Is it that he would be unable to see her die? Maybe he loves her so much that he couldn't shut her gaze down. You could not. Or is there some other reason, a conflict of belief that separates them? And could I stand by and see you freeze without my right of frost, death's privilege? The right of frost here, death's privilege, that somehow both of them, or her lover, possibly unable to face death, and so because they cannot say goodbye to one another, she would be denied her privilege, her right of frost, the right to see someone die, to gaze at them, to be with them as they die. The privilege of death, death's privilege, the right of frost as someone dies. That they love each other so much, perhaps, that at least on his side, parting is inconceivable. And so she would be denied her right of frost, her right to see her beloved as he died, death's privilege.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she uses the image of the frost and the verb freeze, and she reiterates that at the end when she says, refers to despair as white, the white sustenance. I think that's interesting to carry through. And
Great.
the next stanza, nor could I rise with you because your face would put out Jesus's, that new grace. She is not of the Orthodox Christian religion. She can't believe that. But he is, and as she said, he could put out Jesus's, his face could put out Jesus's, that new grace. And also, uh, she couldn't come back with him after death because she doesn't believe in the afterlife.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's such a violent, because your face would put out Jesus's, that new grace, glow plain and foreign on my homesick eye, except that you than he shone closer by. The idea that there's almost something violent about putting out Jesus's face, your face would put out Jesus's face. She has this love that's almost, or that is, a kind of apotheosis that displaces Jesus's face, that shatters what should be an Orthodox religious experience. So she cannot accept his framing of death through a Christian experience of salvation. Paradoxically, because of her love for him is itself a it is itself heretical. It is, and so her, I mean, put out really suggests shoving aside, really displacing violently, and that is just, it's just an astonishing image. Your
Yeah.
face put out Jesus as that new grace, glow plain and foreign on my homesick eye, except that you than he shone closer by. So it is just this you know, almost apocalyptic love, and I love that undermines, subverts, shatters an orthodox experience of religion, and yet in order to accept him as her lover, she needs to accept an orthodox experience of religion, and yet it is her love for him that upends this orthodox experience.
Right. In the next stanza, they judge us how, for you served heaven, or sought to. I could not. Is that even associating with him might be dangerous for him because she cannot follow the Christian religion. She's on another path, her own
Right.
individual
She's
path.
imagining. Sorry. Yes. Excuse me. She's
No, that's
well.
on
She's
her.
imagining the Christian resurrection. I mean, I think that's an important context. When she says, "Could I rise?" she means rising up after death, the Christian resurrection, when Jesus will return from heaven, and she's imagining her lover rising from the dead and literally displacing the image of Jesus, overturning the entire Christian resurrection and becoming a kind of God. Because you saturated sight, you filled my sight to such saturation that I had no more eyes for sordid excellence as paradise. Paradise, by comparison, is sordid. And so it is this, they could not die together. They cannot even rise from the dead together, even in a Christian paradise, because she would be left with her heretical sense that her love for him and that visionary experience of him is so much greater than paradise.
Yes. And again, if she rose with him, I mean, it would be impossible because of her religion, and they judge him just by her associating with him. God would judge her.
Right, right. And people in the community, and also God, as you point out, they judge
Right.
us. How? For you serve heaven. I could not. And of course, that's fairly clear at that point that she could not. And were you lost? If he were to go to hell, I would be, though my name rang loudest on the heavenly fane. So she would be in hell despite being being elected for heaven? And were you saved and I condemned to be where you were not? That self were hell to me. Even if she were saved, even if he were saved, it would not be that she went to hell. It would be that she was separated from him that would make her life or her existence a hell. Where you were not, that self were hell to me.
Yes, exactly. And so they are separated because of her heretic ways. And so we must meet apart, you there, I here, with just the door ajar. That oceans are, and prayer, and that white sustenance, despair. So even though she knows that he is on his path for the Christian religion, she still has a very difficult time separating from him and is in despair because of it. And it shows her great love and admiration for him.
Yes, and again, you have that image of separation here, and we might think again about that porcelain that's locked up in the church, both a precious porcelain maybe to be used on another occasion, but also a shattered porcelain that has become broken and discarded, that somehow it's both too precious for use and also at the same time shattered by the the forces, the passion that has brought it together.
Yes.
So I think that's a really good moment for a transition to your poem. This is by Hunter Reeve, and I will read this. I think this poem gives us a really excellent contrast on this theme of a love that is shattering, that is transcendent, that is heretical. The flowers. The flowers you gave me last forever, even on the spilled. What's for the flowers? The flowers you gave me last forever, even on the spilled red side. You gave them to me again last night, sacred, over and over. Don't think that I will ever lose you. Time is nothing. Their petals ring like the fragile beat in my heart. Don't think that you live through me. It is the opposite climb. I will meet you there as I do each moment of my life. So here we have the image of a gift of flowers. The flowers you gave me last forever. And I love this surrealistic image as if we're looking at cinematically a rose and you turn it around and it has this spilled red side as if blood is gushing from one side of the rose, which is also a darkly tragic image. The part of the flowers last and also the darkly tragic part. And that gift is something in this poem that is recurrent. It is something that is given over and over again. Don't think that I will ever lose you. And this is a gift that abolishes time. Time is nothing. The petals ring like the fragile beat in my heart. Those petals are alive, and there's a kind of synesthesia whereby the petals that we see are also ringing like bells. And the lover says to this person who is absent, as in the Emily Dickinson poem, there's also an absence. The person is absent. The lover says to the person, don't think that you live through me. I live through you. I find sustenance paradoxically from you, even though you are absent, even though you are gone, even though you may be dead. I will meet you. And the the and so the rose or the flowers ring in the moment like my fragile heartbeat, but they are also somehow ahead of me. And there is this promise to meet you there as I do each moment of my life. So this is a poem that really saturates sight, to use that phrase from the Dickinson poem, into a sense of an almost eternal presence, love filling a void, filling time and space into an eternal moment. It's something that was a gift in the past, but also is a promise in the future and a ringing through my fragile heartbeat in the in the present. And there is a similar idea of a love that shatters time, that is beyond categories. So that those are some of my thoughts. What are your thoughts about this poem that you wrote?
Yeah, that was an excellent reading and interpretation. Yes, I believe that I was speaking of someone absent or dead and reaching transcendent love with them, not only of the earth, but way beyond that on the other side. And even on the spilled red side, I think the blood that you refer to, Paul, is very apropos because I was thinking of that, of even death or destruction couldn't uh, interrupt the fact that you gave them to me again last night, that I was given flowers sacred over and over. Don't think that I will ever lose you. Time is nothing. So that's when the love transcends earthly love.
Yes.
And then their petals ring like a fragile beat in my heart. Reminds me of the image of the fragile cup in
Good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Dickinson. And uh, saying that you lived through me, it is the opposite climb, that I live through you, and I will meet you there as I do each moment of my life. That nothing can interrupt this great love I have. It just goes way beyond uh, banality or earthly love.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think that this is, in the Dickinson poem, the love is really definitional. It really, it subverts categories. It subverts organized religion. In the middle of the resurrection, the love becomes something that displaces Jesus's own face as he's resurrecting the dead. It's an extraordinary image. And I think in this love is also definitional. The beloved is not just living through me, I am living through the other. the other who's gone or possibly dead, missing, and eternal. And so I think that the sacredness of love, the tragic experience of love, is something that the defining experience of love as a central defining experience that shatters categories and shatters time is central here. And in the Dickinson poem, I think that the distance is emphasized. In this poem, the ecstatic union is emphasized, but the distance and the gap, the white sustenance despair, is, I think, in the background. Nonetheless, it's predicated on this distance, on overcoming this distance.
Yes, it is. Definitely, there is distance. Definitely. Only in transcending the love does one find happiness or resolution.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think that's a good place to conclude today. Unless you have anything else that you would like to add.
No, that's excellent. And I'm really happy people can hear this and maybe add comments. And I think that we will offer copies of the poems, right, Paul?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. So that you can see them, and yeah, absolutely wonderful. Thank you everybody for sharing these two wonderful poems with us, and it's been a lot of fun to explore these and a revelation. These two literally revolutionary poems. And we hope that you comment and subscribe and join us next time. Thank you all for being with us again today. Bye bye.